We also discussed last class the idea of con and speak, written by this Jew in Britain who becomes the first Jewish prime minister, Benjamin Disraeli. And it's about how Jews control the world. And we were like, why is this happening? And I said, because it's part of the plan. Because not only are Jews supposed to prosper in the West, but people are supposed to think that they are part of a grand conspiracy, okay? Because the end goal is antisemitism and force them to return to Israel. Okay? All right. So, with this plan in motion, obviously these secret societies cannot themselves come out and propose this plan, the secret societies. Okay? So they have different individuals do this for them. This is Theodor Herzl, who is considered the founder of Zionism. The idea of Zionism is that Jews deserve their own homeland, preferably in Palestine, okay? Current day Israel. And he wrote a book called The State for the Jews, okay? And it was heavily promoted in 1896. You also have something called the Scofield Bible, okay? Which is to take Newton's plan and turn it and then explain how the Bible and the plan work together, okay? And this is called premillennial dispensationalism. Okay, don't worry about the idea, okay? Okay. All right. So 1917, you have Lord Rothschild. Okay. Balfour, the British government is sending a letter to Lord Rothschild saying, I have the pleasure of allowing you to create a homeland for the Jews. Okay? So again, this is part of the plan where the British want to create Israel, but they're blaming the Jews for it, okay? They're saying, it's the Jews who want to create Israel. Okay, so in 1948, they create the nation of Israel. Okay, this is Theodor Herzl. And remember, okay, the nation of Israel, it is not part of this grand plan. It's what the Jews aspire to. It's what the Jews want. It's all initiated by the Jews, okay? This is really important. Okay, now, one thing that they say, one thing that the Israelis say is that we deserve Palestine because this is what God promised to us in the Bible. We are descendants of the Israelites. We are Hebrew. We're all one blood. Now, the great thing about Jews, okay, and this is why I have tremendous respect for Jews, is these Jewish intellectuals, they are first and foremost committed to the truth. So this is Arthur Koestler, okay, who is a Jewish intellectual. And he wrote something called the 13th Tribe. In this book, what he tells us is, this is nonsense, okay? The Jews, most of them don't come from Israel. They don't come from the Middle East. They come from Ukraine, okay? And this is called the 13th Tribe. And it explains what happened, okay? So, Amber, could you read, please? All right, could you read this passage, okay?
At the beginning of the 8th century, the world was polarized between the two superpowers representing Christianity and Islam.
So these two powers are the Byzantine Empire as well as the Abbasid Caliphate, okay?
Their ideological doctrines were welded to power politics pursued by the classical methods of propaganda, subversion, and military conquest. The Khazar Empire represented a third force, which had proved equal to either of them, both as an adversary and an ally. But it could only maintain its independence by accepting neither Christianity nor Islam, for either choice would have automatically subordinated it to the authority of the Roman emperor of the Caliph of Baghdad.
Okay, so do you understand this idea? It's very simple. You have these three powers in Eurasia. You have the Byzantines, and you have the Abbasids, okay? Byzantines are Christian. The Abbasids are Muslim. And these are the two dominant religions. And the Khazars think they're a power, and if they convert to, right now they're pagan, if they convert to Christianity, they now have to obey Byzantine. If they convert to Islam, they now have to obey the Abbasids. So they don't do either, okay? So they pick another religion, which is Judaism, right? And it makes sense because Judaism is the first religion. it is from Judaism, in which you have Islam as well as Christianity. And therefore, Judaism is superior. And therefore, we Khazars are superior, okay? So this makes perfect sense, right? Keep on going.
There had been no lack of efforts by either court to convert Khazars to Christianity or Islam, but all they resulted in was the exchange of diplomatic courtesies, dynamic intermarriages, and shifting military alliances based on mutual self-interest. Relying on its military strength, the Khazar kingdom, with its hinterland of vassal tribes, was determined to preserve its position as the third force, leader of the uncommitted nations of the steppes.
Okay. So the Khazar Empire is very ambitious as well. Okay, it sees itself as a great power. Eventually, it wants to unite the different tribes of steppe nations and conquer the world. But to do that, it needs its own distinct identity. So it's not going to convert to Christianity or Islam. All right, keep on going.
At the same time, their intimate contacts with the Byzantium and the Caliphate had taught the Khazars that their primitive shamanism was not only barbaric and outdated compared to the great monotheistic creeds, but also unable to confer on the leaderships the spiritual and legal authority which the rulers of the two theocratic world powers, the Caliph and the Emperor, enjoyed. Yet the conversion to either creed would have meant submission, the end of independence, and thus would have defeated its purpose. What could have been more logical than to embrace a third creed, which was uncommitted towards either of the two, yet represented of the venerable foundation of both?
Yeah, okay, this is a very simple idea. Monotheism is very important because the idea of one God gives ultimate authority to one person, which allows for the creation of empire, right? Otherwise, every God is equal and you have like a lot of gods. So it's important to have one God. You have three religions that celebrate one God. You have Islam, which is doing very well. You have Christianity, which is doing really well. You have Judaism. And no one's practicing Judaism, so let's just take it for ourselves. Really simple, okay? So this was a mass conversion of an entire people to Judaism, okay? Does that make sense? All right, and so this is what the map looks like. As you can see, it's a huge area. This is Ukraine, okay? Modern day Ukraine, the Khazar Empire. Then you have the Byzantines, and you have the Abbasids. And the Khazars saw themselves as equal to both. They want to maintain a separate identity. Okay, they don't want to be consumed by either empire. Okay, and this is another map that shows Khazaria, okay? And then, yeah. All right, can you keep on reading? The only mercy shown by history to those who took to flight or were driven to it was the existence of Khazaria, both before and after the conversion. Okay, so this doesn't make sense. So Jews are being persecuted in Europe all the time. They have no place to go except Khazaria, which is now the Jewish homeland. And the Jews know about Khazaria because they're traders, they're merchants, they're part of the diaspora. So information is spreading about Khazaria, and they all go there. And these Jews are heavily intellectual, and so they bring their cultural practices to Khazaria. Also, we discussed this before. What is a Jewish person? A Jewish person is not someone who is born Jewish. A Jewish person is someone who reads the Bible and accepts the cultural practice of the Jews. And therefore, it's really easy to become a Jew. Keep on going.
Before, it was a refugee haven. After, it became a kind of national home. The refugees were products of a superior culture and were no doubt an important factor in creating that cosmopolitan, tolerant outlook which so impressed the Arab chroniclers quoted before. Their influence and no doubt their proselytizing zeal. This was an age when converting unbelievers by force or persuasion was a foremost concern. That the Jews too indulged in it is shown by the fact that since the rule of Justinian, Byzantine law threatened severe punishments for the attempt to convert Christians to Judaism, while for Jews molesting converts to Christianity, the penalty was death by fire. Scharf, p. 25, would have made itself felt first and foremost at the court and among leading notables. They may have combined in their missionary efforts theological arguments and messianic prophecies with a shrewd assignment of the political advantages that the Khazars would derive from adopting a neutral religion. The exiles also brought with them Byzantine arts and crafts, superior methods in agriculture and trade, and the square Hebrew alphabet.
Okay, so not only did the Khazars wanted their own religion that was distinct from Byzantines and the Abbasids, but they also wanted the skills, the knowledge, the culture, the science, the medicine that the Jews would bring with them. Okay, so this marriage made perfect sense. Okay, so from a logical perspective, this makes complete sense. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to discuss this, okay, because it's embarrassing for the nation of Israel. They're not saying this is not what happened, because there's a lot of evidence to suggest this is what happened. They're saying you're not allowed to discuss this. Okay. All right, can you keep on reading? That's ethnically the Semitic tribes.
Ethically, the Semitic tribes on the waters.
Okay, sorry. So Khazaria is around for a long time, a few centuries, but then eventually they become conquered by the Mongols. And the Mongols are ferocious. They're killing a lot of people. So these Khazarians have no choice but to immigrate over to to Eastern Europe, okay? And they become the European Jews. All right? And so what Kessler is going to do is he's going to show evidence to suggest that they all came from one place. All these different European Jews, they have similar cultural practices, which means they originate from a similar place, okay? Keep on going. Ethnically,
the Semitic tribes on the waters of the Jordan and the Turco-Khazar tribes on the Volga were, of course, miles apart. But they had at least two important formative factors in common. Each lived at a focal junction where the great trade routes connecting east and west, north and south intersect, a circumstance which predisposed them to become nations of traders, of enterprising travelers, or rootless cosmopolitans, as hostile propaganda has unaffectionately labeled them. But at the same time, their exclusive religion fostered a tendency to keep themselves and stick together, to establish their own communities with their own places of worship, schools, residential quarters, and ghettos, originally self-imposed, in whatever town or country they settled. This rare combination of wanderlust and ghetto mentality, reinforced by messianic hopes and chosen race pride, both ancient Israelites and medieval Khazars shared, even though the latter traced their descent not to Shem, but to Japheth.
So genetically speaking, the Khazarians and the Israelites have nothing in common, okay? But they share similar culture. And that's who we ultimately are. We're products of culture as opposed to genes, okay? These are Karaites in the Crimean, in basically Ukraine, okay? And as you can see, they're Jews, and they practice the Khazarian version of Judaism, okay? The first impression, okay?
The first impression one gains is a striking similarity between certain privileged positions held by Khazar Jews in Hungary and in Poland in those early days. Both the Hungarian and Polish sources referred to Jews employed as mint masters, administrators of the royal revenue, controllers of the salt monopoly, tax collectors, and moneylenders, i.e. bankers. This parallel suggests a common origin of those two immigrant communities, and as we can trace the origins of the bulk of Hungarian Jewry to the Magyar-Khazar nexus, the conclusion seems self-evident.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so does this make sense? Okay, there's a lot of evidence to suggest like the Khazars were Jews. And this is really important to understand because guess what? The Khazar Jews, they will take over Europe, okay? And you have three different types of Jews. You have the Sephardic Jews, which basically are the Jews who were expelled from Spain, okay? These are real Jews. You have the Khazari Jews who were in the Islamic world. Again, these are real Jews. The blue, these Ashkenazi Jews, they're not real Jews. They're converted, okay? This is something you're not allowed to discuss at all, even though the evidence is so stark. The other issue with the Ashkenazi is that they make up 80% of all Jews in the world today, okay? And so you go to Israel and it says like, we're here because this is what God promised to us. That's nonsense. But again, you're not allowed to discuss this, even though, again, the evidence is stark. All right? All right. So this conspiracy also helps us, again, explain the JFK assassination. Okay? As well as, so this is the book King Kill. You can read it online for yourself. It's by Downer and Hoffman. And it goes into what the Freemasons would want to kill JFK, the sort of ritual sacrifice ideas behind it, okay? 9/11, all right? Why did 9/11 happen? Because it's all part of this grand plan. 9/11 happened because America needed to go to the Middle East and destroy the Middle East to create Pax Judaica. And that's exactly what they did. Again, Al-Qaeda is, yes, I understand Al-Qaeda did 9/11, but then why did you have to go destroy Libya? Why did you have to go destroy Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria, okay? So, and the last place that they need to destroy is Iran in order to achieve the Pax Judaica project, okay? ISIS, guys, ISIS is, these fanatical Muslims, and they hate Israel, but they never attacked Israel, okay? They've never ever in their history attacked Israel. That's why they're probably controlled by the Mossad, okay? And these guys go around and destroy the entire Middle East, but they never attacked Israel, okay? Really strange how this happens, okay? And all this war on the terror, what it does is it creates all these millions of migrants to Europe, which is destabilizing European society. And these societies, look, Libya was once a middle-class, prosperous society, and now you have these slave markets. You've got these millions of Africans who are sold as slaves in Libya. It is an anarchy now. Okay, so 2015, you have all these immigrants going to Europe, and the Europeans are like, we don't want these immigrants because what are we going to do with these immigrants? They're poor, we don't have the money, we don't have the system in order to accommodate these immigrants. And Angela Merkel, who is the leader of Europe at this time, the German chancellor, she says, we can do this, guys. We can do this. And it has become a dumpster fire, okay? And like, guys, in 2015, everyone knew this was going to happen. Everyone knew that if you brought in millions of immigrants who did not speak English, who did not share European cultural values, and who didn't have much education, this would happen, okay? Europeans are not as open as the Americans are, okay? And even these immigrants are causing problems in America, right? And at no point did the Europeans say, screw you, America. You did this to us. At no point, okay? And you could argue that, okay, maybe it's bureaucratic incompetence, but at the same time, it could also be part of the grand plan to create Pax Judaica. This is October 7th, when Hamas went and killed a lot of Israelis. And this, of course, led to what's happening in Gaza today, okay? And what's happening in Gaza today led to all these protests for Palestine around the world and a surge in anti-Semitism. And this surge in anti-Semitism will ultimately lead to killings around the world. So this is Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, where if you read the news, 2 Islamic State supporters killed 15 Jews celebrating a Jewish festival in Bondi Beach. And quite honestly, we can expect more of this to happen in the future. And you can say this is all just an accident, or you can say, well, it's part of the plan, guys. Okay, these are the red heifers. And these red heifers people spent millions of dollars to genetically create perfect red heifers because nature doesn't produce perfect red heifers. And what people say, the rumor is that these red heifers have been sacrificed already. So now they're getting ready to rebuild Solomon's temple, which will be the site of the world government, okay? Pax Judaica.